Greetings, Andy here again. And this album, I'm picking 14 individual albums from 14 lots of leap years. And I had this sort of thought when I was recording my previous video, which was the February New Music Roundup, which I actually recorded on the 29th of February. And I was in the middle of that and suddenly thought, well, leap year albums, I wonder what other leap year records I've got. So I've gone back basically and I've picked one from each of the leap years as far back as I can go, which is 1968. It's a selection of my albums through time, basically. Not necessarily always my favourite. What I've tried to do here is pick albums which I haven't necessarily talked about much, or at least not recently. And also, I've tried to sort of, over the 14 of them, have a sort of a mix of styles and so on. One year, which will be towards the latter part of this, I've got roughly about 40 vinyl LPs to choose from. And then the previous one to that, which will actually be the last because I'm going to go backwards, I've only got two. So, and in some cases, I've got years where I've got way more CDs than vinyl LPs. And then quite a lot of cases, particularly in those periods, the vinyls are reissues, which I've picked up much more recently. So let's start. I'm going to start in 2020, and I'm going to go back 4 years at a time to 1968, which is, and I can't go back any further than that. So, I've made myself some notes to remind myself of the various records which I could have chosen from. So, for example, in 2020, I've got great records from Fontaine's DC, Flaming Lips, one from Osric Tentacles came out then, and a couple of classic, brilliant jazz albums by Moses Boyd and Nubia Garcia. And it ended up between a toss-up, shall we say, between, I'm denied over these, between Late Night Final and the album A Wonderful Hope. Now, Late Night Final is a side project by J. Wilgoose Esquire of Public Service Broadcasting, and it's a sort of slightly post-rocky, but quite gentle, beautiful record, absolutely lovely. But in the end, I selected a fabulous album, Doves, and The Universal Want. So this was I say a return to film. It was an album released after a big period without one. Absolutely fabulous. It's a single LP, 5 tracks on each side. I bought this originally on CD, but loved it that much. I quite quickly bought the vinyl to go with it. So this is an original. The opening track, Carousels, is superb, and it's got the drumming is by the late great Tony Allen. It's absolutely brilliant. So lovely album by Doves, of course. Doves, Manchester band, and their initial album would have been my favourite of one of these years, but I've only got it on CD. So, and I'm choosing purely vinyl in this case. Single on the Virgin label. So to 2016. Now, funnily enough, I didn't have that much. I'd got mostly digital. I'd got a digital subscription, and I was really mostly listening on that, and then picking up the odd vinyl or CD where I thought it was right. So, Marillion, their album Fear. And also, of course, Radio had a Moon-Shaped Pool out there, but I've talked about that quite a lot. And this is one I've talked about as well, but it's I'm not sure I have recently. And it's Black Mountain and their album 4, Roman numerals 4. So Black Mountain hail from Vancouver in Canada. Absolutely brilliant sort of psych rock. And this is I guess it's their 4th album, but it was the first one I came across. And you can tell it's psyche and proggy, and it contains one of my favourite individual tracks, which is called Space to Bakersfield, which is a sort of 10-minute epic, and it's trippy. What I call wonky wah wah, magnificent guitar work on there, but it's real trippy psych. And there's an absolutely fabulous YouTube live performance on, is it KEXP, the Seattle radio station? So well worth looking, absolutely brilliant. So that's my 2020, and it's a double, just on plain black. So now we head backwards in time to 2012. Oh, I know there were some crackers here. It was a good year for post-rock bands, shall we say, even though some of it wasn't all that post-rock. So you've got Sigur Rós with their Valtteri, which isn't really, it's quite ambient, quite beautiful. Godspeed You, Black Emperor have had an album out. Mono had a First Aid Kit. But it ended up with a toss-up between Polissa, I can't remember where they hail from. It's in the US, but I can't remember whereabouts. And their debut album, Give You the Ghost. But I ended up going for a bit of sort of shoegazy dream pop, shall we say, and it's Beach House and their album Bloom. And this is a superb album. I mean, I love Beach House. They're just really, really, really good. So I've got probably I think I've got all their albums in one form or another, and 3 or 4 on vinyl. In fact, I've just got one on order vinyl that I spotted, which I've never seen on vinyl before. So that's Beach House, and that's a double on black vinyl. Now, 2008. So, you know, I haven't got massive amount, but there was a Mogwai album out in 2008, The Hawk is Howling, which I could have chosen, of course. There was a Durutti column, and No Man, which, of course, is a Stephen Wilson side project. Well, in fact, it predates Porcupine Tree, so we won't call it a side project. Anyway, in the end, I've gone with My Morning Jacket and Evil Urges. So My Morning Jacket, if you don't know them, are a sort of, they're rock, but they've got some sort of real country tinge slide in there. Hail from Kentucky, I think, and led by Jim James. Lovely album. It's got the standout on here is split into 2, and it's called Touch Me, I'm Going to Scream, parts 1 and 2. Fabulous album. I've got quite a lot of Porcupine Tree, and they've got lots of live stuff because they tour continuously, mostly in the States. But so that's that, and again, it's a double, but it's quite a sort of interesting, sort of creamy white and black sort of splodge. So back again now, another 4 years, and we're to 2004, they've got some albums out here. I haven't got masses on because obviously I was buying CD mostly here. There's an album by Blackfield, another which I've mentioned recently, and that's another Stephen Wilson, Green Day, and the Divine Comedy. And there was a bit of a toss-up between the one I chose and Low and their album The Great Destroyer, which I absolutely adore. Anyway, in the end, I have chosen Bark Psychosis and their second album, codename Dust Sucker. Now, Bark Psychosis, this is 10 years after their debut, which was called Hex, and I think I mentioned it on my last video, or recent video, that Bark Psychosis and their album Hex were the band and album for which the term post-rock was originally coined, and then it sort of went afterwards, and various bands before that came were retrospectively tagged with that genre. But this is fabulous. I mean, it is. If you know Hex, you know this. It's post rock, but it's not. There's quite a lot of vocals on it. It's just a superb album, and another double just on black vinyl. And so we come to the year 2000, Y2K, and there's some crackers in this year. We got Grandaddy, which I've talked about a lot. Porcupine Tree had a great album I've talked about. PJ Harvey, ditto, Saint-Germain, absolute crackers in this year. But it ended up with a toss-up between Godspeed You Black Emperor and their second album, Lift Your Skinny Fists Like Antennae to Heaven. But I chose Goldfrapp and their debut, Felt Mountain, absolutely superb. And the opening track, Lovely Head, it showcases Alison Goldfrapp's absolutely beautiful vocals. Fabulous album. I had this on CD when it came out, absolutely loved it. And I bought this reissue, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, I think. So what can I say? It's sort of electronic music, but with, one of the great female vocalists of our time, still going strong. Her Goldfrapp it's her name, Alison Goldfrapp, but essentially it's a band. I've forgotten the guy's name, but it's a duo with her partner is doing the production and playing all the music and so on. Well, she's singing essentially. But she's still going. She's just produced an album under the name Alison Goldfrapp, so it's her rather than the band. Great album, and this one is in a sort of clear, sort of creamy goldy colour. I think it's probably gold actually. So where do we go from here? We're back into the 90s now, 1996. Great albums here. You've got DJ Shadow's Introducing came out, Tortoise, REM, but I'm going for Eels and their debut album, Beautiful Freak. What a cracking album this is. Another one I had on CD at the time and have loved. I've got quite a lot of Eels. Mark Everett, known as E. This one kicks off. The opening 2 tracks are Novocaine for the Soul and Susan's House, 2 cracking singles, which, neither of which have ever dated, and I love to hear them on the radio. But this is a great album, absolutely superb, and it's a single album. It's on plain black. So, back to 1992, and it's a basic choice. I have some reason I had not that many vinyl LPs. As I sort of mentioned in my one of my previous videos, that I wasn't really into the 80s at the time, and I was sort of, by the early 90s, I was starting to get back into music. And one which absolutely grabbed me when it came out was REM and their album Automatic for the People. Now, if ever there was an all-killer, no-filler album, this one was. I mean, you just look at the track listing there, and every half of them were singles at least, and they're all absolutely superb. Again, it's one I can just play without ever getting fed up with. So superb, and it's another single LP on black. So we come into the 80s and to 88. Now, I didn't buy any music in 88. I wasn't really listening other than what I heard on the radio and so on when I was driving around. I wasn't really sort of listening to new music at the time or learning about new stuff. So this album I'm choosing, let's go straight to it because it was a choice of one. And that is Talk Talk and Spirit of Eden. Now, I really, really wish I'd heard this at the time because I would have actually loved it. Now, this album, yes, it's 80s, but it's looking forward. It's not looking back. So this is I would say, an incredibly influential album. And retrospectively, it is the album, the first, really, I think generally accepted as being the first album, which, albeit subsequently tagged as post-rock. I don't really think of this as post-rock, but it was so innovative, so different, and followed by their subsequent 91 album, Laughing Stock. Sorry, couldn't remember what that was called then. But this is just so amazing, so brilliant. This particular version of it was a reissue, and it actually came, not a CD, but a DVD. So it had the tracks are on basically 24-bit flat WAV, so even better than CD. So well, what can I say? I've talked about it before, so have lots of other people, and just a truly superb album. And it's a single on Parlophone label. Now, 1984. The only album I have, which I would say is mine, is Marillion's Fugazi, which I bought way later. But I'm going to choose one of my wife's, Marion's favourite, and it's let's get straight to it. It's David Sylvian and his debut solo album, Laughing Trees. Now, Marion was totally into Japan, and David Sylvian were her favourites. And you know, she's got, now I've got shed loads of their albums, but I'm not wild about Sylvian's voice. But I listened to this recently, just you know, just for the say-so, really. I really enjoyed it. You know, if I can get through his voice, it's quite jazzy. I love the music in it. So I'm putting it up for my wife, Marion, and you know, because I don't really have anything really good from 1984. So this probably is as good as I've got, because Fugazi's quite good, but it's not as good as this. Right, so we're heading backwards now into a time where I've got lots of albums. You know, 1980. Now, I also haven't got very many albums from the 80s, but I've got shed loads from 1980, because really these are more, and you know, these are more looking back to the 70s rather than into the sort of early 80s synth pop and so on. So, you know, I could have chosen loads. I've got, you know, The Beat, Kate Bush, The Police, Jethro Tull, Rush, Dire Straits, any of those. But I thought I've got to put at least one album of his in there. So I'm choosing David Bowie and Scary Monsters. One of my favourite Bowie albums, you know, the fabulous Ashes to Ashes, but the whole album's brilliant. I still have the vision of that, of the video he did for his single with them all walking in front of the bulldozer. And, you know, just a fabulous album. This is an original on the RCA label. So we move into the 70s now, and with 76, and I've got you know, quite a lot of records then, as you might imagine. I sort of just started university, really, so I was pretty, I didn't have any money, really, basically, so didn't actually buy that much. But I got albums from ELO, Steve Gibbons, Rush, Genesis, and in the end, it was a toss-up between 10cc's Wonderful How Dare You and Eagles' Hotel California. I love this album. It's yeah, it gets sort of slagged off. Yes, it's soft rock. But it's so well written, so well played. And you know, some people say, you know, I'd be happy if I never heard the song Hotel California again. I would be happy if I heard it every week. I love it. It's absolutely brilliant. So I've got to include Eagles in there because I like them. And it's on the original label. So now we come to 72. And this one, I counted, I got a spreadsheet, and it's not complete, but I counted 38 vinyl records that I've got. And I haven't actually got to the end of the alphabet yet, so I could well have more. So I think, excuse me, I think I've got more albums in 1972 than any other. So it was such a difficult choice. So I've got, you know, ELP, Genesis, Sabbath, Bowie again, Focus, Elton John, Nielsen, Manassas, Uriah Heep, Pink Floyd, and more and more. And I ended up, this was a four-way toss-up because, you know, I was really struggling and umming and ahhing. And so I got Groundhog's Hogwash, who I went to see this year when they were touring that. Roxy Music's eponymous debut, absolutely superb. And Curtis Mayfield's something different, Superfly, which I've got on a MoFi of. But in the end, I thought I've got to include some proper prog in here. and I've gone for Jethro Tull, Thick as a Brick. Now this is my preferred version, shall we say? I do have the original, but this is the Stephen Wilson remix, which came out, I don't know, a few years ago. Absolutely superb. And I when I was at school, so 72, I was 15. I had a ticket to go and see them when they were touring this. And a kid in school who I thought at the time had more money than sense offered me what I thought was a silly price for the ticket. So I didn't go. And I've long regretted it, because even though he offered me roughly double what I paid for it, in the scheme of things, I wish I'd gone to see Tull at the time. Stupidity. I don't need to say anything about it. Everybody knows it. It's a great. I mean, it was intended as a spoof almost of the concept album and prog as it was at the time. But it ended up being the classic prog album and the classic concept album. So absolutely superb, and on the Chrysalis label. So we go back to 1968. Now, I wasn't buying records in 1968. I was 11, and so I've gone back and bought a couple. I haven't really gone. I've never really gone back to the 60s. I mean, I was buying singles and getting singles and things at the time, which I haven't kept, stupidly, but not really albums. So I've actually got two, which I would say good albums, and it was a toss-up between them. So the toss-up between Pink Floyd, A Source Full of Secrets, which is I've got a couple of sort of reissues. The first one I had was in the Night Fair, which was the first two albums, which were put together as a little package in the, I don't know, about 73 or something like that. But I'm going for the Groundhogs, because I haven't chosen them elsewhere. Debut album, Scratching the Surface, which, as I say, came out in 68. This is they were picked up more recently by Fire Records, who have been reissuing their albums, and I've been buying their reissues because they're really cracking. For quite a lot of the early ones, as a sort of slightly better quality pressing than my original. Guy there is Tony McPhee, who sadly passed away last year. Now, back then, the Groundhogs were really a proper blues band. After this, they evolved quite quickly into a blues rock band, and that's what they're really remembered for. But back then, they were incredibly influenced by John Lee Hooker, and actually, when Hooker toured the UK, which he did quite often, I think, around this time, they were his backing band. So, in effect, they were Hooker's backing band when he was touring the UK. And as I say, it's out and out blues and very good too. But it's quite different from their later stuff, which is, as I say, proper blues rock. So, there it goes on the Fire label, this version. So that's my 14 albums. Quite a bit of a mix. There's some rock, there's some prog. Not any soul. I sort of so and ahhing about that Curtis Mayfield to have some soul in there. But it's sort of what I've shown reflects broadly my collection, and missing some jazz, though I've mentioned it, and missing some soul, and missing some reggae. But other than that, it's sort of proportionately representative of my taste and my collection. So I quite enjoyed that. It took me quite a long time to go through, because I had to remind myself of what I got. I'd look at going back, looking at records released in the year on Wikipedia, and looking at my little spreadsheet, which isn't that accurate. So I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for watching. Cheers.